What's up, fungal associates? Welcome to Completely Arbortrary, the podcast about trees and other related topics. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson.
I am your other host. I'm Casey Clapp, and Alex, I would like to say that porridge was just right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I've edited out the context for
that. Oh, what? Come on. You always ruin every good thing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Casey, speaking of a good thing, we have a t-shirt sale happening right now.
That is right. We're in the thick of it. Things are whirring by us at this moment.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's commerce.
That's right. Oh, jeez. That's right. For the month of June, we're having a t-shirt sale, and it's 20% off all of our t-shirts.
Yep.
And a little extra prize you get.
Extra prize. That's 2 cone stickers, isn't it, Alex?
That's right, Casey. From our vault, as it were, which is really just a stump with like a old-timey wooden pot lid over the top of it.
Exactly. So you open it, it's like,
yes.
And then I pull out all these cool,
all these cool vinyl stickers.
Yeah, exactly.
Where did these come from?
They're beautiful. And then, I stick it in there inside that t-shirt. So you open it up, and what do you have? A surprise cone surprise.
It's like the best kind of confetti.
Exactly. And you can stick it onto somewhere and keep it forever. Yeah, it's also beautiful. For those of you who don't remember, all of our cone stickers are provided by local artists, Alex and I, and our printer here in Portland, Sticker Ninja. And they, all together, we create this as a part of the Cone of the Month Club.
That's right.
The Cone Club, which you can become a part of with our Treemium membership. And if you also sign up for that, you can get all these cone stickers as a matter of fact. You can get into our hidden cone store, and you can go snag any of them. We now have something like 30 cones.
That's awesome.
They're all incredible. And the Douglas fir, it was painted with watercolors, I believe. We have an Eastern hemlock that was made with it's the hand stitching.
Yes.
What is that called again? Cross stitching.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's a hand stitched cone.
Yes, that's the important part.
Then digitized to turn it into a beautiful sticker. It's amazing. So all of our artists do some wild stuff, and we have a couple cool ones coming down the pike right now.
That's true, Casey. And if you want a couple of those cones, go ahead and buy yourself a t-shirt. We've got a few different options on our website. It's a great way to support the podcast and rep this show around town. And somebody says, hey, cool shirt. You say, oh, thank you. I listened to this podcast called Completely. And by that time, they're gone. They've turned away.
No, by that time, they're more interested than ever.
They could become your next best friend. So 20% off all of our t-shirts. And for every t-shirt you buy, you get 2 free cone stickers that are usually exclusive to our Completely Arbortrary Treemium members. And if you want to become a Treemium member and get monthly cone stickers and access to our entire back catalog of stickers, go to arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Otherwise, if you want a t-shirt and a couple free slaps, arbitrarypod.com/merch, and use the coupon code 2SLAPS. That's the number 2, SLAPS.
That's right.
Casey, today we are talking Italian alder.
Well, I wish you were right, Alex.
What are we talking about?
Well, I'll tell you about it because I learned we are not talking about Italian alder today.
Why does this keep happening?
Well, honestly, I'll explain.
I throw my Cheez-It down in disgust.
I'm sorry. Pick that Cheez-It up and eat it. We're on Cheez-It kicks today, everyone. Join in.
That's right. Cheezit.com/merch.
Yes, actually. So this was actually a little bit on me, Alex. Our story today takes place in Italy. So I said, must be the Italian alder. I did some research, and turns out, well, yes, it is, but also, well, probably, maybe not.
Okay, so what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're talking about how this little tree that most people think is, completely dumb and stupid and a weed tree here in the Great Pacific Northwest, the red alder is our example.
The red alder.
A lot of people are just like, yeah, it's just a weed tree, whatever, I don't care. But alders, I think, are really cool, special trees. We've talked about the Andean alder, our red alder. They have these cool nodules in the roots, so they do some cool stuff. And way, way long ago, some very interesting people used this for some very interesting building projects.
How about that?
So we're going to talk a little bit about that, this alder tree.
So are we talking about Italian alder?
We are talking about an alder that grows in Italy, but most people call the European or black alder.
Ah, okay.
Yes, which is Alnus glutinosa.
Oh, what a fun one.
Yes, which is different than the official capital I Italian alder, which is Alnus cordata.
And this tree not safe for our celiac listeners or our gluten-free listeners?
Turn off your radio right now, or
your radio.
Just don't do that. Yeah, it's gonna be rough. but I think you can get through it. You'll avoid hives if you just listen to it backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how that works.
Yale Satan.
Alex, did you say completely arbitrary backwards?
We got to do all this after a break, though. But a quick reminder: if you want a T-shirt, 20% off. 2 slaps is the coupon code. The number 2 SLAPS. Arbitrarypod.com/merch. And with that, we will be right back with the European alder. Welcome back to Completely Arbitrary. Today we are talking the European alder, and that is Alnus glutinus.
Alnus glutinosa.
Glutinosa.
Alex.
Okay.
Yes.
What a fun name. And what does it mean?
It means sticky because the young leaves and the stems, they're sticky.
Oh, so it does share etymology with gluten.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Cool.
because gluten is like the sticky stuff that keeps dough and flour and that kind of thing all together.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Potatoes, even starch.
That's why gluten-free bread is so miserable.
I know it's rough.
It's awful.
Yeah, but if you want bread, you got to do it.
Yeah, you got to eat the bread.
Yep, you got to eat the bread. Hey, eat the bread.
Well, Casey, let's imagine that you and I, as we do every episode, are walking through the Italian countryside.
Yeah.
We come across a ditch with like a bunch of rats in it, and out of that ditch is growing some European alders. Let's ID this tree.
What a beautiful place we're in.
Yeah.
So this is a broadleaf deciduous tree, of which we don't talk a whole lot about.
We really don't.
I know.
I bet we could count on one hand the broadleaf deciduous trees.
I think
we've
you're
covered.
probably right. Yeah. Most people, they love them. Me, Casey, I like conifers. I like conifers a lot.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could probably just do nothing but conifers on this show and be
I know.
totally fine with it.
I know.
All right. Sorry.
You're a conifer man.
I'm a conifer man. What can I say? I'm a watch guy. I'm a conifer man.
Oh, no. You can't have two things.
No. Okay, fine. I'll stick with conifers.
If you want conifer man, you better give me that watch.
Okay, sorry.
I'm the new
sorry.
watchman.
Yeah.
But who watches me? All right, let's talk about this tree.
All right, so it's a big tree. It actually gets up to about 65 or so feet tall. It's 20 meters if you're elsewhere. And it's a wide open kind of growing tree. And what I like about this and the other alder that we were maybe going to talk about, Alnus cordata, the Italian alder, is that they're treated more like normal trees, I guess is the best way to put it.
What does that mean?
Well, so here in the Pacific Northwest, we have our native red alder. And it grows, it gets big, but it's kind of like lamentable. Everyone's like, ugh, the red alder. It's a weed tree. It grows in the ditch. No one likes it. Get out of here. Whereas this species, you'll find it planted in gardens. You'll find it as a street tree. You'll find it in parks. Like it's kind of treated as a respectable tree.
Okay.
Whereas the one that we are familiar with out here in the West, it's just not really. It's not really a respected tree. No one likes it. It grows and everyone cuts it down. Get out of the way.
So it's seen as less of a weed tree and more of just a tree.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
So this grows more specifically in kind of wetland areas.
Riparian areas, would you say?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Okay.
It grows on the edge of streams and rivers and things, but it also grows like in the thick of the wetness. It can take those conditions where the soil is saturated for different times of the year, sometimes all year round, and it can just kick it and it grows very well. It has a perfectly good time. Gets pretty large, especially for an alder. It also becomes more stately, kind of rounded canopy, not quite so... the only way I can describe our red alder most of the time is a little airy, a little bit kind of busted looking.
A little scraggly.
A little scraggly, yeah. Unless you get like a really big old one that's been doing its thing for a long time and it like has that old growth kind of form and it's been in this forest for 80 years, you can give that one a thumbs up. All the rest, you're kind of like, man, why are you losing your leaves green still? It seems unhealthy.
All these riparian trees, life is good, but life is tough, and they don't really have the energy to put into looking good. They just gotta grow and stay stable.
I think that's exactly right, and they do a fairly good job. This species specifically. So you get a little bit closer, and you'll notice that unlike also this alder, which I have to always say unlike this because I'm really used to our red alder, like as an archetype.
This is a bit of a comparison.
Way different. Like this has bark that initially starts out smooth, but then becomes really furrowed and cracked and almost looks like the bark of an oak tree or a white pine or something like that. Like it's kind of uniquely rough and tough looking. Like it's like the tree has to deal with a little bit more. My guess is maybe it had a little bit of fire or had something else that like would cause it to be a little bit rough, but it has developed thick bark as some kind of protection for some reason.
Maybe all those water insects. I mean, it's very, very mosquito heavy, right?
Yeah. I don't think
mosquitoes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Whatever.
I like the idea though
Just
that
give
there
it
are
to me.
mosquitoes that suck the blood of trees.
Yeah.
I guess we just don't call them mosquitoes. We call them like cicadas or something. Mosquitoes. Hey, you're a mosquito. I like
being
that.
mistreated
Yeah,
by all these
sounded a little-
mosquitoes.
I like that. I love this. A mosquito. What would that even look like, Alex?
It would
Can you
just look like a
imagine?
mosquito with kind of a longer
Like a
nose.
big drill that goes in?
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
so
with
cool.
a core borer or whatever. A ring borer.
That would be so funny. It just twists its body around and just curves itself in. So the bark is way bigger. It's very thick. It's a thick barked tree. And I think that also helps build up the stateliness for some reason. I think it reminds you of an oak tree a little bit.
Sure.
But then the real thing that looks amazing that I just think is so cute are the leaves.
I love these leaves,
You
Case.
are you seeing these leaves
Yeah,
here?
they're like kind of cordate, but like reversed cordate.
Yes, exactly. We would probably call it like obcordate. In fact, I think there's probably a term that I can't think of off the top of my head.
Bypassed.
Yeah, these ones are. This has been flipped upside down.
Obcordate. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. But what's lovely is that they're fairly small little leaves. They only get maybe to about 4 inches or 10 centimeters long. They are subovate or orbicular are the terms that are listed here in my resource, which is of course Oregon landscape plants.
Orbicular.
Yes, it means it's like a circle. It's like orb, like an orb.
Sure, like orbital. Okay.
Exactly.
I don't think I've ever heard orbicular.
Oh, really? I don't use it often because you can just say circular.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense, you know?
Totally.
But in the technical sense of fancy words, that's what it means.
Okay.
I always think of them like paddles, but like paddles, and I know this is like a hot topic right now, pickleball paddle.
Oh, sure.
It looked like a pickleball paddle to me because they kind of come up and then they have their base is wedge shape, which is another term for cuneate. So the leaf blade at the base of it kind of comes up at an angle and then it starts to become circular and then it just goes whoonk and is truncate at the top. So it just kind of flattens out.
It's a very interesting looking leaf.
Yeah. So sometimes the smaller leaves can be almost perfectly circular where they look like a circle, and others are just a little bit elongated with this kind of wedged base. And they always have this very flat top, but they also have serrations. So the serrations kind of add this weird fringed kind of top to it. And I just think they look adorable.
I gotta say, I agree with you. They look adorable.
Okay.
And I love, they have that really like, those really deep veins.
Yes,
So it's kind of
yeah.
like quilted almost.
Totally, yeah. Like you can see that they're almost like embossed or something.
Yes. You know, well, I'm about to get very specific, but
Nice.
at the old Doug Fir here in Portland.
Oh, yeah.
It's a venue bar.
Oh, not the old Doug Fir, the tree in Portland. Uh-huh.
Right, the
Yes.
venue bar.
The venue, yes.
which is now shut. And moved.
Exactly.
But
They moved to a different spot.
They moved to a different spot. But they had this stuff on the walls that wasn't like, when it wasn't like logs, that was like this red kind of like, these red quilted like bars.
Oh, yes. I think I remember that.
I'm sure other people experience this in their local bar, but
Yeah.
that is what it always reminds me of, is like that type of quilted wall.
Yeah, I
or
totally
like the
get
back
that.
of a booth, you know?
Yeah. I think the tree term would be, well, not quite here. Never mind. I was going to say rugulose, which means it's kind of rough and veiny. You know, it's like the top of something where you can feel the texture in it and you can see the veins and the texture of those, but it's not quite like bumpy where all the veins kind of are depressed in.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a good
Anyway.
look. I love it.
I agree, and I think these are adorable. So they have these double serrated margins. They're really dark green on top, and they are usually kind of shiny. And they just kind of create this nice little. They're cute. They're just like cute leaves. Now the leaves, you'll notice as you look, are always going to be around two other very interesting fruit/flower things.
Interesting.
Now, these are called catkins. We've talked a lot about catkins before. Whenever we talk about oaks or anything in the oak family, our walnuts, anything in that family, they all produce catkins, but those are the male flowers. Those are the flowers that produce pollen. They're staminate flowers.
Chestnuts.
Yeah, totally. But the thing is, the female flowers, the ovulate flowers, they do not turn into catkins. They are smaller. They have whatever they need, which is just the female parts essentially, to get all the pollen. And that's it. But there's only a few of them, so that when they get pollinated, they turn into nuts.
You're talking on one of these other trees.
On one of these other trees, yeah. Acorns or actual nuts, walnuts, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So you have the male are in these long catkins, and essentially a long catkin is a spike that is pendulous that is covered with hundreds and hundreds of very densely packed flowers all down the way. Now, in this family, the Betulaceae, each one of those flowers in those catkins has an associated bract with it, subtended, so it's just below.
Interesting.
And then, once the male pollen flowers, those pollen catkins bloom, they fall away pretty quickly. They're just gone. Or they kind of hang around. They're just kind of like, whatever. We're not doing anything. We're just waiting to fall to the ground. A strong breeze will knock them off.
By design, right?
Yeah, exactly. Their job is done.
Yeah.
Who needs them anymore, right? Now, in the Betulaceae family, the female, the ovulate catkins, are the thing that separate out all the different genre. So the alders, they have these hard, woody female catkins that open up and release their seeds, just go whoosh, like this. And I have an example for you right here, Alex. You ready?
Oh my gosh.
Ha-ha! Nice. I already dropped that
Casey
off
just
of one of my shelves.
Threw a glass jar at me.
Yeah.
Looks like it might have held spices at one point.
It did at one point, and now, don't lose that tag.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, Alex.
Oh my god.
What a mess. I can't ever give you my cones. Now, Alex is picking this up, and he didn't hear my joke.
I heard you.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I'm ignoring you.
Oh, dang it. He does this all the time.
I dropped a few. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'll find them. But these are you say cones.
I say cones.
But this is a lowercase c cone.
Exactly. This is a catkin.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the same as the male catkins, except they're a little bit wider, they're far shorter, and they stay woody. They don't fall apart, which the true birches, they fall apart piece by piece. All those little scales, all those little bracts with all those little seeds on them, they will flutter away, and then they'll become their own new trees. This, they do not break apart, and that's a big thing about alders in particular.
Okay. It sort of reminds me of like a magnolia flower. Once it's done, or I guess,
Not quite, yeah.
Well, what's that like hard woody thing that a magnolia leaves behind?
Oh, well,
Looks like a little maraca.
Yeah. It's like an aggregate fruit. Yeah.
Is that similar at all?
It is, but the thing about the magnolias is that they have seeds inside these capsules, and then those capsules kind of exude the seed so a bird will come and eat it.
Right.
And in this case, everything is wind pollinated and it's wind dispersed, all the seeds afterwards, which are technically considered nutlets. They're little teeny tiny nuts.
Okay. So different part. Botanical part.
Exactly. It's different botanical part, but where I think you're exactly right is that they're both considered aggregate fruits, where a catkin is a certain kind of aggregate fruit, where it's all these different individual nutlets, which are the actual fruit of each individual flower,
right,
all combined next to each other in this matrix-like circular, big, long thing of all the little teeny tiny nutlets.
When you say matrix-like, I imagine when Neo wakes up and pulls the tube out of his throat and he looks down and it's like...
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm imagining.
Okay.
Yeah, you are spot on, Alex. We have a connection.
Okay, so I will say alder cones, and I'll call them cones.
I think this is fair.
Just know that I'm putting a little asterisk next to it. I know they're not cones. When I first found one, I think I first found and noticed one when we first started the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? Because it looks like it's trying to convince you that it's a cone.
Yes.
But you can tell something's off. You're like, it doesn't really look like a cone, but it does look like a cone.
Totally. I think that this is an example of, I want to say, convergent evolution, because they essentially do the same thing. The only difference is what you're seeing there is bracts along with the stems, the pedicels, and peduncles of the flower head catkin.
So casually, it is a cone.
Casually, I think that's like not too far off. Yeah. There's an individual scale that comes out that has a seed on it. It just so happens that that seed is inside of an ovule that then matures to be a tiny, hard little nutlet. That tiny little nutlet is the seed and the ovary, which then takes it away from the conifer side because the conifers don't have that ovary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like it's similar to calling it a juniper berry. Like it's not a berry, but it's like
it does the same thing a berry does.
Right. It looks like a berry and it walks like a berry, it talks like a berry, but it's a cone. And this looks like a cone, walks like a cone, talks like a cone, but it's a catkins skeleton.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. Yeah. So I think it is now the same convergent evolution, but just in the opposite way.
Cool.
Yeah. So there you have it. So those are the big things about this alder tree.
Hey, what's alder wood like?
Alder wood. Well, actually, I'm really glad you asked. Man, Alex, you're getting good at this. You're getting good at it.
I don't usually ask.
So alder wood it kind of plays a unique role in our story, but also in the rest of the world. It decays quickly. It does not ever, when it's up in the air, when it's laying on the forest floor, it doesn't stick around.
Okay.
So as soon as it hits the ground, it starts to decay, and it's gone in no time.
Cool.
The roots of this tree, the reason it grows in such harsh conditions, you may recall, it has a bunch of little nodules in its roots, and each one of those is home to the bacteria, I think it's Franklinia alni, and it's this teeny tiny little house for all this bacteria that fixes nitrogen from the air down into the soil / the roots of this tree. So it can live in really bad conditions because it basically is producing its own requirements.
Okay.
Its own nutrients, I suppose.
Sure.
So that creates a tree that grows up in the worst places and then falls in these worst places, which, they're swamps, they're filled with fungus, and they're filled with all sorts of different decay organisms, and they decay really quickly. Now, our red alder here, if you cut into the bark, its inner bark is a very red color. I have read that the alder actually has a lot of lore that has to do with evil, because the black alder specifically, if you etch into the bark, it'll actually stain black once it starts to oxidize.
Oh, sure.
So this, of course, there's other ones that I think it's either this species or the other one that we're not talking about, the Italian alder, also in Italy. This is gonna be confusing.
I'm.
I was like, well, I'm just here for the ride. Don't worry, Casey. I lost track a long time ago.
I mean, yeah.
So as soon as you cut into it, its sap is red, so it looks like it bleeds blood.
Sure.
So this has been a tree. It also, of course, grows in swamps. So it's been associated with witchcraft and evil and all that kind of stuff.
Some trees are just perfectly fit that niche.
Yeah, they totally are.
Like everything about them is so on theme. You know?
So it's just a spooky little tree.
Yeah.
And so it had this idea, but you would also, it would mean that this tree has some kind of power with it. So sometimes you would cut it down and then you use this wood or something for something, but I don't really know. I didn't focus on that because all of my time was focused instead, Alex, to think about how this wood is used in a way that is anti to what you would think would happen to build an entire city.
Wow.
The city we're talking about is Venice. Have you ever been?
No.
Neither have I.
Really?
Yes. Did not go to Venice when I was in Italy with my mom this last year. We had only enough time for certain things.
Sure. I mean, Venice, honestly, would be pretty kind of low on my list.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Interesting.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, what do you get about it? What's tell us a little bit about Venice.
I know that it is built much in the same way as Mexico City?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just probably built on water.
Yes, yeah.
So there's a ton of canals running through it, and it's like the whole city's on stilts.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Is that true?
It is extremely true.
Why would they do that?
Well,
I guess humans got to live places?
It's a great question, Alex. So here's the sitch. There once was a small little group of people that collectively called themselves the Roman Empire.
Oh, wow.
Now, the Romans were a pretty powerful institution for like 1,200 years, certainly in the West, certainly in Italy explicitly. Once that Roman Empire kind of started to wane, it was in the, 3s, 4s, 100s-ish, that kind of time. Essentially, the western side of the Roman Empire, as I'm sure you are aware, started to atrophy. It's the best way I can describe it. And at this time, they were delegating themselves out of existence is the best way to think about it.
Interesting.
Where they split up. They had two different emperors. One was in Constantinople and continued the Eastern Roman Empire for another 800 or 900 years, something like that. Like literally up until the Ottomans invented, or rather, I guess, gunpowder and stuff was invented.
Yeah.
And the Ottomans blasted holes in the walls of Constantinople.
Whoa.
Like that's when anything that was in a technical way the Roman Empire really truly was like dead and gone in the dust.
Amazing.
By some accounts. Other accounts will say other things. Let's not get into that. That's a whole other podcast. In fact, that could probably be a whole series of podcasts.
I was going to say, Casey found a way to talk about the Roman Empire.
God, I love it so much.
Do you know that meme?
I think so.
It's like
maybe not.
Guys who think about the Roman, like how many times per week do you think about the Roman Empire? You know, and
I've heard about
you were totally one of those people.
Yeah, which sucks because damn it, I don't want to be lumped in that.
I think most men probably fall into one of two categories, which is the Roman Empire kids.
Okay.
Or you always think about like medieval England.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
I am more of a medieval Englander. You're more of a Roman Empire.
I do like Roman Empire stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, luckily it's germane, so I'll finish the story.
It's pronounced German.
Sue me, sorry. So what happened is, as the Roman Empire was atrophying in the west side, they delegated themselves out of existence and basically said, okay, you guys go take care of this. We're going to be over here. If you have any questions, let us know. If you need any army, get them yourself. We don't care. And during this time, you had other entities coming down. So the Germanic tribes and the Huns, famously, the Goths and the Visigoths, these people.
It's pronounced Germanic.
God dang it. Sorry, Alex. I'm messing this up so much.
You set me up perfectly.
I just can't say anything right.
It tied a little bow on the whole joke. Moving on. Thank you.
So what happened is all these people started coming down, and there was nobody to guard these cities. And it used to be that Rome had its borders, and Rome said, thou shalt not come within our borders without either our permission, and if you do come in without our permission, we're going to go blast you back to, whatever. So they would always have these huge big battles, but there was the frontier. There was literally like walls up in England, Hadrian's Wall, all these things. And they said, this is the end of our empire. Do not come in.
Like a DMZ.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what it was. Over there, whatever. We don't care. Do whatever you want. Over here, this is us. Over time, because there was not enough people and it became too big, they couldn't actually keep their borders secure. So what happened is they started building walls around their cities. Those cities were then managed by individual people that essentially was the very beginning of feudal Europe. You're seeing the connection there,
Totally.
Right?
Was walls around a city kind of a new concept?
Yeah, well, not really a new concept. I mean, Jericho, the oldest city in the whole world, was like that. Okay. But no, this was a new concept for the Roman Empire specifically. Okay. Because they didn't need to have that before. It was just, there was nobody out there, or there was this huge protection of the wall, or I say wall in quotes because a lot of it's like a river, or just, this is the end of our territory. There's a border, right? So what happened is, as soon as that border became a lot more loose, they said they can run amok in the countryside, and then we will hold ourselves up in our little castles, our walled cities, and we will just be cool with that. When they leave, we'll go back out and clean up the mess. Okay. So that's kind of what they did. So this started happening, and when Attila the Hun came through, and like all these big names of the Visigoths and all this kind of thing, the 400s and such, all these people got completely destroyed and were refugees. And those refugees fled to the east, and they went into this lagoony area. And this was the only place they could find that they could just chill and live and be fine. And that is the kind of impetus for what became today Venice.
Sure.
So they would walk over and they were like, okay, great. There's a couple fisher folk there and people lived there. It wasn't like it was completely devoid of any habitation. But when all of these refugees essentially went east and they moved there because no one wanted that land really, and it was not especially attackable because it's essentially big lagoons and like muddy inlets. And I think if I remember correctly, there are 117 small islands in this area, at least today.
Kind of reminds me of like the Neck in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's just like miles and miles and miles of like you'll sink if you try to walk across it in plate armor.
Yes, this is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So that was precisely what they were walking into, is this muddy mire mess of a landscape.
Muck.
Thank you. Mucky muck.
The muck and mire.
Yeah, I love that word.
Great.
I love them all.
It's great.
So what happened is they said, okay, how can we do this? How can we figure this out? How can we build on top of this land? And they did a very unique, interesting experiment with wood. They found out that if you take wood and you submerge it.
It's just such a funny.
So funny.
It's just such a funny setup. Because I imagine you going, if you take wood and you make it into planks, you can build
walk
things
over the top of the planks.
And I'm like, yes,
crazy. Yeah, wouldn't that be a horrible podcast? So what they did is they carved it into squares, and they set hundreds upon hundreds of these squares on top of each other.
Oh, I know plenty of podcasts that laboriously describe very basic concepts.
Nice, yeah. Well, hey, we're part of that.
No, I don't think so.
That's our pantheon.
Let's go back. So
anyway,
they have this experiment with wood. Experiment with wood.
Thanks for the interest, Alex. So they would maybe make these planks. You'd be great. Okay, it's muddy as hell. Let's just lay this plank over. We walk over that. It would sink. It was also seawater, so tides would rise every little bit, and then they come back down.
Sure.
And you'd end up getting essentially this like completely unusable land.
Yeah.
And it was filled with a certain kind of like clay and silty soil that submerged underneath all this water, it would just kind of give way. If you set something on, it would just move to the side. Like it was not a stable situation.
Like oobleck.
What is oobleck?
Oobleck is like a if you mix like baking powder and water.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's viscous, but it's like solid and liquid at the same time.
You slap it, it's really hard. You just gently put your finger through.
Yeah.
It just goes right through.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Good job.
What a fucking useless
That was
interjection.
not at all. It helps everybody.
I quit.
What, Alex? Well, it's just me now, everyone.
It's my dream.
Jeez. So what was interesting about Venice and all their engineers is instead of just laying planks on top, they started to really engineer the hell out of these islands.
I'm genuinely curious to hear how they did this.
They took trees, alders, historically as the story goes.
Okay.
Because where are they? They're in a riparian area. They're alders that are growing and that were coppiced all along the banks of all these inlets and streams and the lagoon and the rivers that come out. There was just alders growing all over the place.
Yeah.
So they would cut these alders, they would coppice them. So they would cut them down, then they would grow back into bigger stems. They'd cut those down, so on and so forth, and just keep regenerating this new material.
And they're collecting these little whippets or whatever.
No, they would let it grow to be between 4 inches and 10 inches wide, so in diameter, which alders grow pretty quick. So that would happen in the matter of, 10 years or so. Whoa. So what they would do is they would cut them, and then they would nail, it'd be about 12 or so feet long, and they wouldn't nail them. They would just hit them and drive them into the soil.
Posts?
Yes, long 12 foot, 3.5 meter posts.
Wow.
They would just drive them straight down in. Then they would put another one right next to it, and another one right next to it, so on and so forth. But they would drive them specifically, Alex, under the level of the water.
Okay.
Now, they would do this to have about 9 or so at the minimum per square meter, which is about 3 or so feet square. You would have about 3 by 3 of these, 4 to 10 inch bits of wood driven straight into the ground.
And what is under the water?
It's just this silt clay, muddy kind of mess.
Okay.
Whenever you see if you ever walk in mud at next to a stream, or not even a stream, like a lake or something, that's what it is.
Okay.
So it's awful. It doesn't support anything.
Yeah.
So what they would do is they would drive it in. They would drive in the next one. They'd drive in the next one, and they'd put them underneath the water.
To be that laborer.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be awful.
Oh my God.
They would do this for the entire city. But this is also over hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's not just like they did it all in one day.
This is not a weekend warrior type thing.
No, I don't think so. But they would put them, and you can go into areas right now. Like you can see the archaeology that's happened. In fact, there is in our show notes, there's a Nova special. It's like 2.5 minutes, and it shows a really good example of what this looks like. And they would jam them in. And what happened is that the wood itself is not all that strong. But if you put it down underneath the level of water, it wouldn't decay.
Wow.
Because decay organisms work in the air.
Yes.
Not underwater. At least not near as quickly.
Is there, in the air,
Yeah.
but not in water.
Exactly, because it's anaerobic versus aerobic conditions.
Sure. Okay,
So,
I thought maybe aerobic actually included the water.
Well, there is oxygen in the water.
I think that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but there's way less. And the things that usually do the decaying, they simply did not have the space because it would also be entirely filled with mud. They would put them so close together that the whole point wasn't to actually put the stilts so that you have like a foundation of stilts. Maybe here's one, there's another, lay your plank on top, and now you almost have like a bridge system.
Right.
They're jammed so closely together that they actually are reinforcing the soil in between. So the soil was really the thing that was holding everything up. It just was no longer moving left or right or up and down. And then they would throw crushed rock on top of it in between to add to that support.
Brilliant.
It is one of the most amazing things because they built like this gigantic city, not just a little house, not just a walkway, but like fully like made gigantic plazas with huge stone buildings because they would put these vertical posts.
That is the impressive part. Is
how would they do that?
How big Venice is. It's not like they were building a village.
Yes, precisely.
Like a fishing village. This is like a metropolis.
This became a huge metropolis.
Yeah.
So they would do that, Alex. They would lay down planks horizontally. They were also underneath the water line. Then they would put limestone on top and around some of these things. Then they would put bricks on the top of the limestone that was above the water line. And then they would build the rest of their everything.
Okay, so even the wood that was above the water wasn't coming in contact with air.
No wood above the water.
Oh, no wood above the water.
No, it's all underwater.
The wood is all underwater.
Yes, so it's vertical and horizontal planks under the water with limestone on top until you get out of the water, and then bricks.
That's so fucking brilliant.
Yes.
How are humans this smart? That is amazing.
Honestly, how were we that smart?
Right.
And now we're not doing anything near as good. Now we're just
of course
using straight concrete. So I guess
our achievements now involve computers.
Yes,
which is
that's
also
true. Yeah,
incredible.
we've done some other things. We've pivoted.
We landed on the fucking moon.
Yeah, allegedly.
If you believe that story. So when you were talking about this, I was like, I was trying to get ahead of the story a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I see.
In my mind, I was like, how do they, And I started thinking that maybe you were going in this direction that you kind of did end up going in a different way.
Yeah.
Was using alders, because we've talked about how I think it's like willow trees. Their root system is like fur. It's like matted, like really fine hairs.
Yeah.
And this helps keep the shoreline in place.
Keeps everything there, right?
Yeah. Because how would you even describe that? It's like
fibrous is what
it is.
It's
like oobleck, It's like
Now, for those of you who don't know, oobleck is this goop.
Yeah, it's like using sandbags to soak up water.
Okay, sure, yeah. It's
in a way.
It's just using this natural process that these trees have already gotten, and you're just like manipulating it to some degree.
And yeah, so I was thinking, they're going to plant a shit ton of alders, and that's going to stabilize the ground.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Which is kind of what they did in a weird way.
In a weird way,
Yeah.
they planted it, but they do not grow.
So they For they are dead. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then look at Venice now.
And
Holy
look at
shit.
it now.
It's got cathedrals and shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's huge.
Is there...
Oh, no, go ahead.
Is there any modern worry of Venice, floating away?
Yes. Oh, there's a lot about that.
Okay.
But not floating because everything is like stuck in the ground. So there's not going to be anything that's floating, but it's getting flooded a lot. Because apparently I read that the sea level from when they first founded Venice to today is 6 feet higher.
Because of climate change.
Exactly. Climate change now over, the last 1,500 years.
Yeah.
But that's just going to keep getting worse and worse. I also read that they used to get floods once a year, and now it's hundreds of times a year.
Oh, no.
And these are floods, but they're just the tide rises normally and slowly, but now it comes in a little bit further, up a little higher.
Sure. And that's how it starts.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's the boiling frog, right?
Mm-hmm. The hot summer's here.
Yeah.
It's wow, it's July and it's 115 degrees outside.
Yeah.
But, it started with a 110 degree day a few
exactly.
years ago. And before that, it was 100-degree day. And that was really hot.
Well, so here's the funny thing, though. Man. So people are looking into this, and they're basically saying, okay, what's preserving these trees down there? How are they doing? They have been, in some instances, these individual trees driven into the ground. They have withstood for 1,000 years at minimum, closer to 1,200 or 1,500 years.
Yeah.
And they're still sound enough because it's not the trees themselves. It is the stuff that they are also holding up. So there is compression going down, spread over a bunch of these things, but a lot of them are starting to decay. So there's little tiny bits of decay. Some are more decayed than others. Some are a little bit less. And there's a lot of people curious about how this is working. Of course, over a long period of time, things are going to shift and move. So they are experiencing that.
Yeah.
They're trying to work with it. Climate change is really affecting it. So it's like a modern engineering marvel how they're maintaining this city.
Truly.
But it is a big concern. But the thing is, these trees are still doing really, really well. So they're kind of well, honestly, in fact, one of the articles I read, it specifically ends in saying, yeah, we're finding these reports of all this stuff, but considering there are no problems evident in the buildings, I guess it's working fine.
Wow.
So they did these samples. They're they're decaying. There's an amount of decay in there, but they appear to be just fine.
You expect it to be much worse.
Yes, over 1,000 years, and it's not. Yeah.
Especially seeing, I will say, by the way, I now do want to go to Venice.
Ah, good. We got you convinced.
You got me.
There we go.
But looking at photos of the canals, and the buildings are not on a waterfront.
Yeah.
And then there's a shore. The buildings go directly down into the water.
Yes.
It's crazy.
I believe the buildings essentially create the edge of the water.
Yes, yeah.
So that's another thing is that, you used to have, what did I say, 117 small islands and big islands. They're all different sizes. There are 177 canals, 409 bridges. So it's insane, right?
I thought Portland had a lot of bridges.
Yeah, right. We all of our 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many again?
We have 13 bridges.
Or how many in Venice?
Oh, 409.
How?
Well, every bridge is a bridge, right? So it's just you have one canal of your 177.
Yeah.
Every road on your grid crosses it. That's one bridge,
Holy
right?
Shit.
So if you counted every bridge that goes over a storm drain pipe in Portland, you'd get up to that number.
Yeah,
we just happen to put them in pipes and then bury them. It's essentially open.
That's amazing.
Well, so the other thing though, Alex, is that if you have this long, weird shaped kind of island, and you want to make it nice and cornered because you're going to put a building there, then all you have to do is go out and start putting all of your piles in the ground to where that edge is. So maybe the actual island that used to exist, if we can even really go back in time and say, okay, here's where the old island stopped. Then you just square that off. And now your building is put there.
Totally.
And now the island, in quotes, that's underneath, it's technically still there.
Yeah.
But it has been completely modified And now you can't even see it because there is a building and a road and a plaza on top that's squared off that makes it look like nothing was ever there.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
If you imagine you were the person who was a part of the group who came up with this idea.
Yeah, right?
And you could time travel to today and see Venice.
See what it became.
Wouldn't it just make you so proud?
Yeah, to know that it's still working. You could probably go to the same building that you made and knock on the door and, I don't know, say hi.
I also wonder if they would be able to understand each other. But that's a
whole other
that's
question.
a whole other topic.
Now, before we move on, Alex, I do have to add one big asterisk onto top of this.
Oh, no.
It's not a bad one, though. It's a fine one.
Venice doesn't exist.
Venice isn't real. You aren't real. And the trees they used were provided by aliens.
Now, let me tell you about chemtrails.
No, Alex, this is actually, it's fine. It just has to be a little asterisk.
Okay.
So I learned about this initially by reading a book called Around the World in 80 Trees.
Oh, yes.
We've talked about it a lot because it's just filled with great stories about all these curious trees.
And if you are interested in this book that we're about to describe, we have a whole page on our website,
Exactly.
arbortrarypod.com/books, where they're all affiliate links if you're cool with that.
Yeah, exactly. It helps the pod for sure.
It definitely helps the podcast, but also seek them out at your independent local bookstore.
Exactly, yeah. So, read this book. Lovely book. Went through it. Great idea. I believe either my mom or my sister got it for me for Christmas a few years ago.
Lovely.
And so I was like intrigued by this. I thought it was very fascinating. So when we were going to cover it, I was like, this is a shoe-in. we're going to talk about the history of Venice. I also heard it on the podcast, the history of Rome. So I was like, oh, this is great.
A perfect crossroads of your interests.
Perfect. And then I was curious about how the actual, what's the process of non-decaying? And mostly it just comes down to it being an anaerobic situation.
Sure.
There's just not oxygen, so nothing really decays. It's classic how things become rocks and fossils in the bottom of oceans and lakes and things.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
Same with mummification.
Yeah, exactly. Just a lack of oxygen. Everything's just sitting there and it just kind of becomes inert.
Cool.
But in doing that research, I learned also that you get little bits of minerals that come in, but a lot of people have claimed it becomes as hard as stone. So they actually claim that the petrification process happens way quicker. But there is some amount of just little bits of particles and minerals that seep into the wood. And this happens if you pull up any amount of wood from the bottom of any swamp or river. They do it in the Southeast all the time where there's old logs they pull up from the bottom of rivers. And they're beautiful because they have they're impregnated with different colors and minerals.
Interesting word choice, but I like it.
Oh, sorry. I believe it's the best one. I believe it's the correct one.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the rainbow wood.
Yes, exactly. That's perfect. Except that is 100% actually petrified.
Sure.
These are just the very, very beginnings of that. And then the rainbow wood also has different pressures, and so it's kind of crystallized. So it's, 100%. This is just that very first 1% of that happening.
Cool.
But it turns out also while reading that everyone's like alders, but there was a bunch of trees that they used for it. Alders were one of the top most ones because they were everywhere. Like we said, they grew on the edges of all these riparian areas.
Yeah.
So people would go and they'd be like, sweet, there's alder. We're going to use alder. Alder works great. We can put it down here and it doesn't decay. Big thumbs up.
You use what you got,
Yeah, exactly. So they used a lot of alder, but because of the age of this wood, they can only look at the wood kind of the characteristics of the actual physical stuff to know what kind of species it is.
Okay.
And you cannot tell the difference between Alnus cordata and Alnus glutinosa from the wood alone. So
not even with genetic testing?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't seem like it, but these researchers, maybe they just didn't do that. They just looked at the anatomy of the wood. So I'm not 100% sure, but they could not tell you, or they could not tell for themselves which one it was, but they assumed based on how much Alnus glutinosa, the European or black alder, is around this area, because this is in northeastern Italy. They were like, it was probably Alnus glutinosa.
Cool.
Which I checked is also what is in Around the World in 80 Trees.
Okay.
Even though it's in Italy, it is not probably 90% the Italian alder. Alnus cordata.
Okay.
However, they did use a lot of Larix decidua. So that's the European larch.
Yes.
They also used, in one instance, these guys found Norway spruce, Picea abies. And so this makes sense because in that part of Italy, if you go up a little north and a little to the west, the Alps, and larch is up there in gangbusters.
Oh, yeah.
So is spruce. However, this wood would be better used for different things. And so they probably used it more on the inside as structural wood inside the buildings themselves rather than in these planks or in the driven poles.
Okay.
They also used oak, and again, you can't figure out exactly which oak it was based on the wood, so it's probably the sessile oak, which is Quercus petriae, and the English oak, Quercus rubra, which it's just a European oak. We just call it the European oak or the English oak. So those were the trees. They also, the last one that they used very often in the actual driving of it was Pinus sylvestris, another mountain species that you can find all over the place if you go just a little bit afield from where they're at.
In the driving of it, so like for their tools?
No. They would use that as the actual piles going down.
Okay.
So those are Larix decidua, the European larch.
Yes.
The European alder,
Yes.
which is Alnus glutinosa, and Pinus sylvestris. In this one study, those are the three main trees that they found driven down in. And for the planks that were put on top, that was mostly oaks and mostly Picea abies.
Wow.
As well as a bunch of larch as well. They did that there.
Amazing case.
Yeah. So
a very fascinating tale.
it's a fascinating tale. So I didn't want to lead with that because I feel like it would ruin it. But the story holds water.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Well done, Casey.
Thank you.
Speaking of tying a bow on a joke. Wow. Great. That was our discussion of the Italian alder. We got to give a rating to this tree. Not the Italian alder, the European alder. It's because I have it written as my fucking project title.
I know. It's because I wrote it over here.
You and your 11th hour changes.
I'm so sorry.
We'll be right back with Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary. That was our discussion of the European alder and Venice, the city that wood built.
Yep.
Kind of.
I love that.
Casey, it's time to give our review.
Yeah, let's do it.
And here's how it works. We're going to give some final thoughts on this tree and then give it a rating of 0 to 10. Golden cones of honor. I also suggest that we give a little bit of a preliminary rating to Venice as a city.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I like this idea.
There's this terrible app called Tubi.
Never heard of it.
It's just like free movies with ads.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But they have a lot of original programming. They make the worst shit you'll ever find on the internet. It's amazing.
Nice.
And they have a movie called, I think it's Shark in Venice. And it's about a shark that terrorizes Venice by swimming up and down the canals.
I love this. I love everything about it.
Casey, as our resident expert, we'll begin with you.
Right.
What's your thoughts on sharks in Venice?
Okay, my thoughts on sharks in Venice is that's hilarious and I love it.
Yes.
And I hope that in some near future world, a tornado is going to come down and suck that shark right out of the canal.
Sure.
And then there's going to be, obviously, a Sharknado in Venice.
It's a prequel to Sharknado.
It's gotta be. It's
in
just
Venice.
Gotta be. So 10 out of 10. But for the city of Venice, honestly, I'm going to give the city of Venice a 7.5 out of 10.
Great.
Because it's a World Heritage Site. It's a beautiful use of like what you have to make it work, and they did a fantastic job of it.
Yeah.
They are in a pickle right now because of climate change, but they're doing their best to try to figure it out without like completely destroying it.
Sure.
So there's good and bad because they have to do a lot of essentially environmental engineering, but it'll be interesting to see how it is done. So I give that a 7.5 out of 10 because I think it's pretty cool. I think it seems like a pretty cool idea. It's also supposed to be romantic, so, whatever. I'm a romantic guy. Mm-hmm. Finally, the common European or black alder. I love the leaves, and I love that there's also a couple really cool cultivars of it. They are very lace-leafed, so essentially their veins, there's very deep incised sinuses between the veins. So it looks really cool. It's a very interesting tree.
More oakish, maybe?
Yes, a little more oakish, but like if oaks were just sharp, just like triangle lobes almost. It's very fascinating.
A sharp oak leaf, like oakish pokish.
Exactly.
Sounds
like
magical.
Pokish. I don't want to mess with that tree. So I think this is a pretty cool tree. You know, I think it does a lot of cool stuff. It obviously is very important to a lot of people. It's planted as a park tree. Apparently, it might be semi-invasive elsewhere in the United States, in like Australia. I have not seen it almost at all, even in the even in here in the West, up in the Pacific Northwest here.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's invasive around here, but we don't plant it enough to where it like maybe would get a chance to really start going wild.
Sure.
But I know there's one in the Arboretum. I've only seen it growing there, nowhere else. It seems like a great tree. I bet we should maybe plant it a little bit more because it seems like it might be a great tree.
Wow.
So I'm going to give it also a 7.5 because it's a fine tree. It doesn't jump out of the skin. It doesn't do anything else. But I think that it would be a tree worth trying to plant in harsh locations like city streets and watch it grow up and become a nice, big, beautiful tree. It'll make its own nitrogen. It's not near as prone to just falling over and falling apart the way our other native alder species is.
The red alder.
And honestly, I really like the bark.
Yeah, it's good looking bark.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it a 7.5 with a hope that I can give it a higher score later once I can see it and hug it and watch a big, beautiful one grow on my road.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go. What about you, Alex?
7.5 golden cones of honor for the European alder from Casey Clapp.
That's right. Now, could I get you to open that jar again? Take a look at those little alder
Oh,
cones.
sure,
I just want you to get a feel for it.
Yeah, listen. I ain't no alder man. I ain't no alder boy, as they say. I have never had any strong love for alders.
Yeah.
I think the cones are the cones. Yes,
Cones are the cones.
are pretty interesting little guys, but they also, you know, now that I'm a tree learned man, I look at these and I'm like, I immediately would be able to tell now, like, these are not cones, these are like flower parts, right?
Yeah, okay.
Especially like the way they grow. I don't know, something about them just I could tell.
Nice, yeah.
And it's not just because I know already, okay? I could tell. I'm smart.
It's just the way it is.
It's just a vibe I catch from these things.
God.
But after today's story, Casey, you know, sometimes you'll bring a story into the podcast, and at the end I'll be like, I don't care, this tree sucks. Sometimes I will like a tree already. You'll bring in a story. I'll be like, great, I still like the tree.
Yeah.
This is one of the rare times where I had no interest or love for this tree. And at the end of it, I'm like, man, this tree rules. I think this tree, is great. And I'm going to give it, listen, the tree itself is fine.
All right.
It's a tree.
I'm cool.
It is the most like basic off the shelf tree, but its importance to its importance in history is cannot be questioned.
Yes, I agree.
It's amazing. I'm going to give it an 8.0.
8.0. Okay, very well done. I love this. I think that's perfect.
Great tale. That was our discussion of the European alder. We hope you enjoyed it. Casey, it's time for our completely arbitrary AMA.
Well, this is one of my favorite opportunities on this show.
Me too. I'm glad you look at it that way. If you want to ask a question on the podcast, become a Treemium member at arbitrarypod.supercast.com. That's ARBORTRARY pod.supercast.com. We have a question this week from Susan.
Oh, right. Susan, how you doing?
Hello, Susan. Susan says, hey, Casey and Alex, I love the podcast.
We love you.
And I used a lot of the knowledge you impart in our exploration of botanical gardens in Portugal.
Hey, okay.
So this leads Susan to the question, if you were to compile a list of the best arboreta to visit, very nice use of the word arboreta.
Yeah, very nice.
Which ones would be on that list, U.S. or worldwide? Susan and her husband are building a list of destination gardens, Casey.
Ooh, okay.
And I thought this was a really interesting question.
It is an interesting one.
Because it's interesting to me to think about like arboreta being like really like there being like different levels of quality, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And like an arboreta being like a destination that you would go to, because I don't think about it that way a lot.
That's very fair. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people do, honestly. I think it's one of those things where you go to a city and you're like, oh, we should go there, rather than like going to a city for that particular thing.
And your kids are like, oh, no, I want to go to the wax museum.
Oh, those kids in their wax museums, they always do it.
And I say wax museum because when I was a kid, we took a family vacation to Victoria, Canada.
Really?
And we visited the Bouchard Gardens there, Casey, and that was one of the first ones that came to mind. And I remember even as a kid thinking that it was just gorgeous.
Yeah, and honestly, that is one that is on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit about this because you always like to give me a quick little, hey, here's the question I might ask.
Sure, I don't like blindsiding you.
Yeah, we used to do that, and then we realized it'd be better if I thought for a second.
Yeah, a lot of the answers were, I'm really not sure. I'd have to look that up.
Interesting. Yeah, so we're back to normal. So here's the thing. The big one that comes to my mind, which I have not been to, lamentably, is Kew Gardens outside London, England.
Yes.
And that is a result, honestly, of colonialization, but it is a result with such beautiful and incredible history that you just gotta be like, wow, okay, that's pretty amazing. Because what happened is they would go out and collect all of these different plants from all these places across the world. They would send them back because that was the whole point. We got to go see what resources are out there. How can we use them? How can they be better for Her Majesty's whatever? So they would bring them back. All the people who we always talk about, the David Douglases, all the Scotch botches, they would send all their stuff back to Kew.
Plant explorers is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's a very European idea. And Kew Garden is the seat of the Royal Botanic, folks, I guess, the societies.
The Royal Society?
Yes, thank you. So what they would do is they would plant all these things, see what would grow, and then they would have them. They would be there. They would be growing. So there has been plants that were found by David Douglas that was sent back and are still growing there today.
Wow.
There are like Douglas firs that are really huge that are growing there that they brought back.
Amazing.
It's just a really amazing collection that has shifted from colonialism to intense research where they keep track of all the species of all of the world and their most up-to-date and accepted scientific names, things like that. Okay. So it's just this wild, beautiful garden that's sprawling, and it's in the aisles where it doesn't get too cold, doesn't get too hot, so you can keep a lot of really weird stuff there. So that is number one place that is on my list to go.
I told you before we started recording, I was looking at photos
and
how one of these greenhouses looks like a palace.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's wild. And then Bouchard Gardens is the other place. That's out in Victoria, Canada.
Yep.
And it is incredible. I've also been there, but that was probably, I don't know, right early college maybe? But yeah, I went there with my mom, and it's just one of those gardens that's just so lush and filled to the brim with everything. You don't even know what to look for. You're just like, I can't handle this.
It's very Shire-esque.
It really feels like it. Yeah, there's like a big waterfall coming off. Like there's a backdrop of like a big hill and everything. It's beautiful.
We had tea time when I was a kid at Bouchard.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Speaking of colonialism.
Yeah, right? There you go. So the other thing, another one that I've been to a few times, and I would dang straight go back to. I went there with Tobin Mitnick, Jews Love Trees, Huntington Gardens down in Los Angeles. I guess technically it's outside Los Angeles. But Huntington Garden is one of the most incredible spaces I've ever been to.
Wow.
If Kew Garden has all of the different things that have been collected across the entire planet that are temperate, Huntington has all the things that could grow across the entire planet that are sub to kind of tropical.
Yeah.
They are, and it's like this, some very rich person. It's got a whole museum of incredible art there as well. But the grounds, they have different gardens. They have a Japanese style garden. They have a tropical garden. They have a couple conifers that are really unique and rare. Then they have this whole section of cactus and euphorbia and succulents that just goes on and on and on and on.
Euphorbia.
Yeah, euphorbia, it's the species of things that look like cactuses that you would look at and think, oh, that's a cactus, but it's not technically in the cactus family.
Okay.
Cactuses are like straight up North and South America.
Gotcha.
Euphorbia grows all over the world.
As our last one here, I want to pitch something.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to give you the name.
Okay.
And then you're going to have to sell it.
All right.
Hoyt Arboretum in Portland, Oregon.
Done. It's on my list. I have a list of another like 6.
Okay. Wow. Well, let's just do Hoyt.
Yeah, we'll just do Hoyt, and I'll list the other ones just so you know what are there.
Okay.
But the Portland Hoyt Arboretum is my favorite place. I love going there all the time. It is specifically recommended for conifers and for magnolias.
Cool.
So it's got a accredited collection for both of those, and there's like tens of species. I think I just read in an email they sent out that there's like some 300 different species of conifers there.
Wow.
It's insane. There's
That's
only
a
like
good chunk of them.
650.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that is, it's just a ridiculously beautiful place with a massive amount of really curious trees. And they are connected in a big complex of parks to Washington Park and the Portland Japanese Garden.
Yes.
The Portland Japanese Garden has been revered as the best Japanese garden outside of Japan in the world. So, highly recommend you check that out. So, I think that they're all part of one thing. And Washington Park is more of a kind of curated park-like area. They're about done with the big construction project there, which is going to create this huge, beautiful reservoir that's going to be back. It's going to be like off the charts again in like 5 seconds. And it has this big, beautiful space with these giant, well-spaced trees. There's amphitheaters. There's a rose garden. It's truly a beautiful place. And you can literally go from downtown Portland. I mean, like downtown Portland. You can walk up a path and immediately be in this amazing park that just slowly, circuitously goes up. Then you're in the thick of Washington Park. You can walk up the hill a little bit, and then you're at the rose garden. The test garden for all these different roses, of course, we're the Rose City.
Yes.
From there, you can go take a quick jaunt at the Japanese garden. Then you can catch a little tram. That little bus is going to take you all the way up to the top of the hill where Hoyt Arboretum is. And then you can walk all the way back down and stop at the zoo if you're really nasty.
What a day.
Yeah. So
and the Children's Museum is
and
up
the Children's
there too.
Museum, the Forestry Museum.
Love that place.
It's a huge complex of fun.
Yeah, that whole section of Portland is so like valuable.
Yeah, and you can walk a little path and go up to Forest Park and the Pittock Mansion, an old mansion from some guy.
Right.
So yeah, it is a really, really beautiful complex, and you could essentially walk on one path through all of these different parks, and you can do it all. Yeah, I don't think you can really do it in a day, but you can all do it from downtown Portland. You can do it from the Max. The Max goes right to the zoo, and you can take a little elevator that goes up, and you are in the Arboretum at that moment.
At the top there, you look out, you can see all of Portland over to Mount Hood in the background.
You can see the other mountains. If you look north, Mount St. Helens, and on a very nice clear day, you can see Adams and Mount Rainier.
And you'll get up there and you'll go, oh, I saw this postcard in the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like where all the postcards are taken.
We did it. Yeah. So if you go to Portland, you gotta go there. It's just amazing.
Lovely.
And it's all free unless you want to go into the Japanese garden or into the zoo. It's all there.
Amazing.
So right before we go, though, if you're in New York, go to the New York Botanical Gardens. They're world famous.
Great.
Missouri Botanical Gardens also if you're in St. Louis. And if you are looking for more tree stuff, then Morton Arboretum outside Chicago is famous. So is Arnold Arboretum in Boston. That is connected with Harvard. So they have also a bunch of old, really interesting trees from around the world. And Balboa Park in San Diego is also a fantastically interesting place with a big conservatory, like the one you saw the picture of, where you walk into this glass house and it's just filled to the brim with orchids and all these tropical plants that you're like, how do these even exist here?
Totally.
Absolutely insane. Cool. Highly recommend it.
Although you did mispronounce, Casey.
What did I say?
Arnold Arboretum. It's Arnold.
Dang it. Can I not say anything right today, Alex? What is going on with me? I just feel like a fool.
You got to sound like a local.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you, Susan, for your question. We hope we answered it thoroughly. I feel like we did. Although, I mean, it was a little U.S.-centric, but I guess that was part of the question. Besides England, which is basically
the other one that was in Canada.
Yeah, well, come on.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They're all basically the same place.
Well, we only talked about 3. Okay, whatever. Every Canadian listener is going to be very upset to hear you say that.
Thank you, Susan, so much for your question. If you've got a question for us, like I said, join up on arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Become a Premium member. Support this podcast. Get great rewards in return. And a quick reminder that our t-shirt sale is happening all of June. Use the coupon code 2SLAPS. That's the number 2, SLAPS, to get 20% off any t-shirts and 2 free exclusive, I will say, cone stickers.
They are exclusive, yeah. You can't get them anywhere else.
Per t-shirt.
Exactly.
Although you can get them somewhere else if you become a Premium member as a part of the Cone Club, Casey.
That's what I'm talking about.
You get monthly cone stickers sent to you. Create your own little cone collection and support this podcast that you love so much.
Yep. And we love you too.
Oh, we sure do. Casey Clapp.
Alex Crowson, another good one.
A great tale. To draw back the curtain a little bit today, Casey, as I'm wont to do.
Well, this is why you listen to the end of it. It's just like Allie Ward. She always gives a secret if you listen to the end of the show.
That's right, yes. My secret today, my Wardian secret, is that I did not feel like recording today.
Yeah, we actually talked for like almost 2 hours before we recorded.
About some pretty heavy subjects.
Yeah, heavy subjects.
And I was already not feeling great, and I in an act of desperation, I said, "Do we have to record today?" And you said, "Yes, Alex," and you patted me on the head. You gave me a little. You gave me a little
strawberry. Yeah.
Yes. And I am glad we did. It maybe didn't cheer me up necessarily, but I really enjoyed the discussion. I learned something new.
Good. Well, go get yourself on up to Hoyt Arboretum, Alex. You can do that today.
That's true, Casey.
And you can go see this tree for yourself.
That would almost certainly cheer me up. In fact, I've been struggling with a little bit of depression for the last 3 or 4 decades. And
wait a second.
Getting into nature is always, it's not a cure-all, but it certainly releases a little bit of pressure off that valve.
It really does. It really does.
I think it's good for kind of giving perspective, Casey. If you or just also, we've talked scientifically, chemically, there's something that happens to your brain when you not only look at the color green, but when you look at trees and
you smell
plants,
them, you feel them, you're around them. Yeah,
totally. And get your bare feet on the ground. That's really important.
That's what I'm talking about. Sink in that mud.
That's right. Become a pile underneath of Venice. But it does certainly help. And there's no cure-all for the blues, but that is one thing that could get you a little bit of the way there.
Yeah, well, hey, that's half the reason. Also, go check out all these parks. That's what they're there for.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I encourage you to go and get out, and I'm happy that you were able to talk to me all about that today before we recorded, and then keep doing the recording. I know that can be hard.
Yeah. I pushed through. I'm a very brave little boy.
Yes, you are. I'm gonna give you another strawberry.
All right. Thanks for listening to Completely Arbitrary, everybody. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Au revoir.
Completely Arbitrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp. Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals. If you want to support this podcast and become a Premium member, head over to arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Thanks for listening.